Hello, and welcome to the CloudSwyft webinar on Microsoft Azure AI Technology Skills in Global Industries. Today, we will be hearing from Microsoft Certified Azure Data Scientist Associate and Head of Artificial Intelligence from Just Analytics, Vishal Ladha. This webinar session will be focusing on the AI technologies on data analytics, the trends, skills needed for a successful career, and real-life application of Microsoft AI in data analytics. During the webinar, you may have questions you would want to ask Vishal. Feel free to send them through the Q&A section marked as a question mark chat button in the upper right-hand corner of your screens, as shown in the image above, an image on your right. Don't forget to enter your name, and then we'll know it's from you. The webinar will begin shortly. Okay, now let us welcome Mr. Vishal Ladha, Head of Artificial Intelligence for Just Analytics. Vishal, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, May, for the introduction. Let me share my screen. So first of all, I would like to thank CloudSwyft for giving me the opportunity to share insights from my working experience on AI. And before we get into it, just a very brief intro on Just Analytics. So we are a Singapore and Vietnam based specialized partner in data and AI. And just as our name suggests, Just Analytics, we purely do only data and analytics, and we don't focus on other things, and we take pride in being technical experts in the field of data science, data and AI. We have a strong team of more than 75 certified consultants across Singapore and Vietnam. We have delivered more than 125 plus projects in last 8 years. And these are some of the customers that we work with. So in the banking space, we work with Standard Chartered, DBS, UOB. In logistics, we are working with FedEx, MOM. Telco-wise, we are working with Singtel, Telkomsel in Indonesia. So these are the companies we work with. Now, we were also awarded the Partner of the Year from Microsoft for Data and AI in FY19, and we were also the Partner of the Year for Microsoft for Data Estate Modernization. We've been awarded as the 30 most admired companies to watch out for, and so on and so forth. We're a gold partner with Microsoft and also a partner with Databricks as well. So before I get into talking about the right skills that we need in the AI industry today, I want to first touch on what sort of a skill gap do we face in AI today and why is there a skill gap? Because that has a direct relation to the right skills that one who is new to AI must acquire, and those who are already in AI should also keep enhancing. There's a direct link between the two. So I think all of you would have heard this, oh, data scientist is the sexiest job of 21st century, etc., etc. LinkedIn says it's the #1 emerging job of 2020 with 74% annual growth in hiring. Harvard Business Review hails it as the sexiest job of 21st century. Glassdoor says it's top of the 50 best jobs in America for 2019. And CIO magazine says it's the #1 most in-demand job for 2020. Now, with all this hype around data science, one thing that very often people miss out is that this hype is not new. This hype has been there for a decade. I got into my course in business analytics in 2013. At that point, it had already been in hype for almost 4-5 years. So the point is the hype has been there for almost a decade. Then why is there still a gap in the skills? And the reason can be very clearly explained by this very simplistic diagram, which is a research called the hidden debt in AI. Now, let me first explain to you what this means. Now, in this diagram, each box is a component that you need for a successful AI or data science project. Now, the size of each box in this is proportional to the amount of effort and time that goes into that part. right? Now, the problem with data science, very often the way people approach it today, and the way people have been approaching it all this while, has been that people think that what defines a good data scientist is this small part, which if you can see on your screen is the ML code. People think data science is 80% ML and the rest everything is just getting in place. But actually the reality is that the ML code makes up, I would say, hardly 40% of what defines a good data scientist. In fact, the latest trends in AI are such that the significance of your expertise in ML code for a major portion of it is not decreasing, but it's slightly consolidating. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that for your ML code to run efficiently, you need to have in place a lot of data engineering and other ML ops mechanisms in place, which very often people ignore. For example, how do you retrain your model automatically? I mean, I used to work with a telco before working for Just Analytics, and every month, in fact, many of you may not believe, but every month I would spend almost a week simply retraining certain models and also scoring the models for the month. Now that is something that is not something which you want data scientists to do. That is something that you need to automate. And that's what cloud does. And I'll be covering that later. So point is that a lot of these pieces around data governance, bringing the data in, cleaning the data, operationalizing your ML model, making sure that you detect the drift. So what is drift? Drift is essentially I build a model today. And today my model is very good. Let's take, for example, imagine I'm Singtel. I build a churn model, which is basically telling about, okay, which of my customer is about to leave. Now I build a model today, but tomorrow what will happen is we have Circle's Life, and you know how aggressive Circle's Life is. So Circle's Life comes up with a big plan which offers you double the data in the same amount as Singtel. So then what will happen? Your churn model will experience drift, which means the underlying reality of the model has now changed. So how do you do things like drift detection, automatically detect this change or deterioration in your model and trigger automated retraining? All these things are things that data scientists often ignore. And they often think that, okay, I know ML, I know this algorithm, I know that algorithm. But to be very honest, from my experience working in this industry, I can tell you 80% of the use cases become successful or fail, not because of the ML code. It is because of how you operationalize it, how you maintain it, how you do the ML ops around it. I'm not saying the ML code is not important. ML code is important. ML code validates that there's a pattern in the data, at least at this point. But how do you consistently and sustainably and efficiently use that advantage from your data? That depends on ML ops and all these other big boxes that you are seeing around this small box of ML code. So this is one of the key reasons why we have gap in the AI skill sets today. Now, the second reason for gap in AI skill sets is something that anyone who is embarking on this journey must understand how amazing and fascinating this field is. Now, what you see on the screen right now is what we call ML engineer roadmap. Now, I mean, you can just Google it and you'll find a GitHub link to this and you'll be able to zoom it and see. Now, what this essentially tells is that the number of boxes you're seeing here, these are the things that you need to know to become an ML engineer, a real ML engineer, a real AI scientist. Because many people these days, they just do a simple algorithm and then I'm a data scientist. But no, you need to know a lot more than just knowing how the algorithm is working. So there are a lot of things. And the thing is that this field is growing at such a fast pace that those algorithms or those technologies that I was using 4 years back they are not my first preference algorithms anymore. Some of them I even discard and I exclude when I run AutoML experiments. So this field is evolving so fast that if you really want to excel in this field, you need to keep enhancing yourself and you need to keep upgrading yourself. And you need to keep learning about the latest technologies. So to summarize, what I believe is that three reasons for the skill gap, and these three reasons are what you can take advantage of if you are starting on this journey of artificial intelligence to make sure you don't fall in these pitfalls. First one is a lack of multidisciplinary approach to AI. Sometimes people think I just do ML, I just know this algorithm, I know how to code, I'm a data scientist. No, you're not a data scientist. Probably you are an ML engineer, maybe some sort of an ML engineer. You're a coder. But what makes a data scientist is a combination of these four. First is you need to know your maths. You need to know what are the different types of distributions that are there. What are the statistical elements? In what sort of distribution? How would you do certain things? There's a whole bunch of statistics around it. Second is your programming and database knowledge. Very often when people talk about ML, they often miss even the database side of things. You need to know how to work with databases. You need to know how to play with databases, modify them, alter them, update them, insert into them. You need to know all these things, and you need to be very proficient in Python, right? So I mean, data science is coming to a point. Data science is coming to a point where even if you don't know the details of all the ML algorithms at the beginning, you can still do something meaningful if you know how to code well in Python and you know how to use the right components that cloud is providing. Right. The third aspect that makes a successful data scientist is domain knowledge and soft skills. You need to be able to pick up certain domain understanding of whatever problem you're trying to solve. Otherwise, you may end up missing predictors, the right predictors, or you may end up picking the wrong predictors. The fourth is the communication and visualization. You need to know how to visualize it. And when I say how to visualize it, I don't mean that, oh, I know just how to visualize it in the technical sense. I run this code and I visualize it. No, you need that. But you also need a sense of how to visualize it. What visual would actually make sense for the business user? Because ultimately, those who are at the top, they don't care so much about whether you used logistic regression or you use ridge regression or you use KNNs or LSTM, whatever. They don't care about that. They care about the insights. So you need to be careful on how you visualize it as well. So these are the four things you need. So first is you should have a multidisciplinary approach where you work on all these. Second is the thing that leads to skill gap is a super fast pace of evolution of AI, which leads to an equally fast pace of AI skills obsolescence. So you have to keep upgrading. And the advantage of cloud, which I'll highlight later, is that it takes care of a lot of things by automating them, by encapsulating them, so that you can focus on the latest technologies. And third is lack of ML ops skills. So this is something also which you need to be mindful, which you will learn when you learn Azure Machine Learning, which will help you to really do AI in a sustainable fashion. So now this brings me to my next part. Why Microsoft for AI? Why Microsoft Azure for AI? And the answer is actually stemming from all these problems that I just highlighted. The thing is that the ML AI platform, it simplifies the whole AI process and the ML ops process. Remember this diagram that I showed you? There's so many components to take care of, serving the infrastructure, monitoring, etc. The Azure platform simplifies it so that you can focus on the business problem, business understanding, and you can focus on creating models and trying more problems faster. So this basically frees your time to focus on this broad, broad evolving field of AI, where you have new things to keep pace with every day. So in terms of services, so it's broken into three parts. First is the services, second is the infrastructure, and third is the tools. Services is basically the high level thing where it breaks down into three different parts. First is your custom AI, where you use Azure Machine Learning Service to build custom solutions. Second is pre-built AI, which is cognitive services. Now in cognitive services, so it's basically, I'll be covering this later, but it's basically got to do with your senses, right? You have your custom vision, you have speech to text, you have so many other things which are related to visual and speech elements or the cognitive element of it. That is also covered by Azure in a very simplified way. If time permits, I'll do a demo for you as well. And third is conversational AI. Conversational AI is basically about chatbots and IVRs. Chatbots are textual conversational AI. IVRs or integrated voice response systems, which is what I mean, when you give a call to your customer care, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. That's IVR. But what we're talking about here under conversational AI is conversational IVR, where it talks to you just like Alexa does to you, or just like Cortana does to you, and understands your problem. And it's an AI agent which recommends solutions to your problems. So that's the conversational AI part of it. And then you have the rest of the infrastructure that takes care of your deployment, MLOps, how do you store your data, how do you run your notebooks. And then you have different tools which you can use to work on both of these, the services and the infrastructure. So machine learning on Azure basically covers the entire stack of AI problems that you may think of. You want to do something that needs GPU, we have GPU. You want something to do with, I mean, if you want to do IoT, we have FPGA. We also have productive services like Azure Databricks, the advantage of which is you can auto scale up and down, and you basically save cost by using Azure Databricks if you have huge workloads of big data. And then you have domain specific pre-trained models like vision, speech, language, and search, which I'll be covering in detail slightly later. So this is the whole Azure AI stack. And another thing to note is it is not just that it will work on the cloud. If suppose you're in a manufacturing scenario and you want it to work on the edge, you can deploy Azure machine learning models on the edge as well. That's the beauty of it. So coming back to this, I'm now going to focus on these three pillars: Azure Machine Learning Service, Cognitive Services, and Bot Framework. And I would try to give you a very brief overview directly in the Azure portal as well. So let's get started. So first, I'd like to talk about Azure Machine Learning Service. Now there are various components to it. I don't think I can cover all of it in next 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But I'll take one amazing feature of it called AutoML or automated machine learning. Now this allows a person who doesn't even know machine learning to do machine learning. So let me walk you through this. Now suppose the question I'm exploring is how much is this car worth? Which means that the value that I'm trying to predict is the worth of a car. Now there are three aspects to every machine learning problem, right? You have your features, you have your algorithm, which algorithm you want to choose, and what are your parameter values for that algorithm. Now these three things define the performance that you get. So let's say we have these features, we'll do different permutations. We'll take mileage, car brand, year of make. We'll choose a particular algorithm. We'll choose certain values of these parameters. And then we get a 30% accurate model. We do another iteration, make some permutation combinations, we get a 50% accurate model. And this where data scientist just keeps doing, and then finally figures out, okay, this was the combination that was giving me the highest performance. Now what AutoML does is you give it your data set, you tell what is your goal, what are you trying to predict, and then you tell what are your constraints, how much time you want to allow it, how many iterations of ML you want to allow it, and then it intelligently tests multiple models in parallel using various optimization techniques, and then you get the final model which is 95% accurate without you yourself going through that entire churn of trying different permutations and combinations. Now, the other thing, the other amazing thing that Azure Machine Learning Service offers you is model explainability. Now, feature importance is just one of those things. I mean, this you can get even in open source, but Azure Machine Learning Service goes one step further to define local interpretability, global interpretability. I'll explain these concepts now. So let me now take you to Azure Machine Learning Service. So I've launched the Azure Machine Learning Studio over here. Okay, so there's a lot I can cover in this, but let me take you straight to AutoML. You click Start Now. Okay, let's do a new automated ML run. All we need to do is just upload a data set. You can even connect to an existing data source that you have on the cloud. Let's give it the name Titanic. So we are taking the data set of the Titanic, which predicts whether the person will live or die, right? So let's go to the next step. Let's browse it. So let's go to my demos folder. I'm picking up my data set now. So I've selected my data set. I'm going to the next step. Okay, so it's asking me for the delimiters. That's correct. My delimiter is comma. Whether my columns are headers, no. Skip rows, no. Oh, sorry. Yes, my columns are head. So okay, use header from the first file. Yep, we had headers. So now you can see we have the data ID, passenger ID, whether the person survived or not, passenger class, etc., etc. Right? So let's go to the next step. Now we can select which predictors to keep, which not to keep. Let's keep all of them. Let's go to the next step. And then let's create. So now what we have done is we've just created a data set. Now let's take this data set and let's go to the next step. Let's configure a run. Predict lives. Okay, let's select a target column. Now it will list all the columns that are there in my data set. So I'm choosing whether the person survived or not, right? And I have to give it a resource on which it can do the computation. So I'm giving it a resource. Then I click next. Okay, let me give it another name. Titanic demo. Okay. Now what it does is it asks me, what would you like to do? Are you trying to do a classification problem, which is basically telling whether it is falling in this bucket or that bucket, regression, which is trying to predict a continuous numeric value, or is it a time series forecasting where I have certain data, my sales data, etc., and I'm trying to forecast the future. Now, in our case, it's classification, right? Because it's predicting whether the person will live or die. So that's categorical. So let's select this. Now I can choose to enable deep learning, but that would take a lot of time and resource for now. So I'm just going to choose classification and okay, there are additional settings that I can do. I can tell it what is my exit criterion. So I can give it a smaller amount of time. Let me tell it 0.25 hours, which is 15 minutes. And then I can select which metric to use, etc. There are a lot of settings, but the session today is not that long. So let's keep it to this. Let's save it. Let's save and then let's finish. So now it's creating an AutoML run. Now this will take 15 minutes. We can't stay on the screen to wait for that. Let's go to the next thing and we'll get back to this to see the results if it ends in time. But even if it doesn't end in time, I think you would have got a glimpse of how easy it is to run an AutoML experiment, even without much knowledge of data science. Now, this doesn't mean you don't need it. What I'm trying to say is that there's a major chunk of problems that the low-hanging fruits that can get solved by this. You still need data science understanding. You still need machine learning algorithms knowledge. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next thing that I wanted to share with you all was Cognitive services. Now there are 5 big buckets under this. I'll give you an overview of each of these and then I'll go and demo to you one of them. So the first one is vision. Now this is something which is the most popular out of this entire stack. Now vision has multiple applications. One is facial recognition. Second is image classification. For example, you have products being manufactured, and in fact we did this for one of the companies as a pilot, where you have a product that is being manufactured. Now you want to automate the process of how you validate whether this product is defective or not. So that's where you do defect detection, right? You may also want to do OCR, which is basically taking text, I mean images and converting it into text. So you may have certain invoices. If you want to automate invoice processing, you would use OCR. You may want to get certain insights out of videos, right? For example, suppose if I'm Nike and I'm sponsoring FIFA, I would want to know how much exposure I got in that video. So you may want to use what we call video indexer for that, which is also a vision service to get insights. Now the point is, anything under the sky that you can think in the vision space, you can do using Azure Computer Vision. I mean, the Azure's vision stack, there are few other smaller services under that stack, but you can, I mean, so far I haven't been able to find any computer vision problem which is not being tackled by Azure Computer Vision. The second one is speech, which is essentially speech to text and text to speech. Now, there are various ways you apply these two things. One is real time, one is custom. So suppose you want to do certain transcriptions of let's imagine. Imagine I'm Berkshire Hathaway. I'm working for Warren Buffett, right? Now I may want to do a speech to text translation of all the big stock market related channels, right? And then I may want to do certain sentiment analysis for particular stocks. So what I would do is I would train a custom speech model. Why? Because there's a specific type of media that I'm transcribing. So in that case, by training a custom model, you get a better performance. So that's speech. Then we have language, which is essentially your NLP, your entity recognition, your sentiment analysis. Now, compared to 3 years back, this field has also accelerated and evolved quite a bit. Earlier, and when people used to talk about NLP, especially in my university days, you know, NLP for me was just about few things. One was just tell me the sentiment, just tell me the topic. I think that's all it was about, at least the way it was projected at that time. Now today there are a lot more things in this. This key phrase extraction. So for example, you have, again, let's take the example of Berkshire Hathaway, and I'm working for Warren Buffett. The economy is down, he wants to make profit. So what he wants to do is he wants to take all these analyst reports and he wants to get a gist of all of them. Then what he'll do is he'll do entity recognition and key phrase extraction. Key phrase extraction to just summarize what is the gist of this article. Entity recognition to recognize what are the entities, I mean to extract entities that he's interested in from those articles, right? And there are a lot more things in this stack as well. Then we have knowledge, which is basically Q&A maker, which I'll try to demo today. And then you have search APIs as well, which I'll not get into so much because that's not so much directly AI. I mean, it is used, leverages AI, but still a bit far off from the general notion of AI. So those are cognitive services. Now let me quickly walk you through custom vision, which is one of the computer vision services under the cognitive services umbrella. I mean, honestly, I'm so fascinated with the Azure AI stack that I just feel, because earlier I was working with on-prem solutions, and I see it's a difference of land and sky. Where the cloud services provided by Azure are, it's a difference of floor and sky. I mean, I think it needs you to work on on-premise solutions and do AI on that, and then come to this for you to appreciate how amazing this is. In fact, there are things that I would be doing in 3 months earlier on-prem, which I now do in 15 days. There are things that I used to spend 3-4 days every month doing, which I have now automated thanks to Azure AI. So this is custom vision, and we basically built at our office a COVID-19 safety monitoring solution where if anyone, including my CEO Himanta Banerjee, if anyone, including the top person or anyone, if they don't wear a mask or if they don't follow social distancing, I mean, there's a set of people who are responsible for it and they get an email alert that this person has breached the rule. And then we sort of do something about it. So for that, we built this model which would take the video feed, extract people. First, what it would do is it will detect people, extract them, and then it will send them for classification. So you can see here, I've created a data set of people. So one means one means he's wearing mask, and zero means not wearing mask, right? So now you may think why these photos are funny. We made these funny because this type of modification basically enhanced the model performance. Because what we were doing is we were taking the full frame and we were zooming in. So that's why we had to do this. Now, based on this, all we did was we just tagged them as no mask or with mask. And then we just clicked the button train. And then we got the model and we got a very good performance. We have a 92% recall, 92% precision. It was a really good performance. So, and then what you can also do is you can test it in the UI itself. Just add any image and you can test it as well. Right? We did many other use cases for other customers. For example, for Unilever, we did something to, so what used to happen with Unilever is that, they have these ice cream cabinets and they give these to their shopkeepers. But what used to happen in certain countries was shopkeepers would sell them and that's how they were misusing it. So they have this manpower which goes down on the ground to validate whether the stock is up, whether people are putting whether they're getting the right positionings for Unilever stuff or not, etc. And there also a lot of corruption used to happen. So they wanted us to build this model which would basically detect whether number one, it's a Unilever cabinet or not. And number two, they also wanted us to build a proof mechanism for this, so that if a person takes a picture of that, or he makes a video of an existing video or uploads an old video, etc. How do you detect that, right? So we did all that. So we built a system which was able to detect, basically eliminate 90% of this whole thing. And the other thing they wanted to see is for every zone, they had certain critical SKUs or products which they always wanted to have because they were most in demand. So for that also we built a model which would detect whether those were present in the cabinet in the right quantity or not. So computer vision is an amazing field. I mean, out of all the AI fields, if I love one of the fields most, it's computer vision, because the way you can use it is amazing. I mean, we have built so many computer vision solutions. One solution we built, that was for Microsoft AI for Accessibility Hackathon. It would detect fall of an elderly person. It would detect if an elderly person was in a position where that elderly person was at a risk of a fall or whether the person was sick. And we won the prize for that as well from Microsoft. So that's custom vision. And the last thing I wanted to show you is Q&A Maker, and I'll show that to you in 5 minutes. Q&A Maker is very simple. You give it a document with certain Q&As, FAQs, and it will automatically create a chatbot for you. For example, we gave it this link, which is our Just Analytics. So we gave it the link to our data science accelerator program, Now here we have certain FAQs at the bottom. So now we just gave it that, and then it was able to create a custom, it was able to create a Q&A chatbot for us. So let's take a look. So all you need to do is you just need to give it a link, then it will process it. It will get back to you with certain list of questions. So if you see my screen, it got back with the question and the response that it feels it should give. Now you can also add an alternative phrasing because this question may be asked in a certain slightly different way as well, right? So you can add that and then you just click train and then finally you get the model. Let's test it. Okay, let me see. Let me save this. Okay, so it's saved and trained. Let's test it. Do I get, do you deploy model at end of accelerator? I'm phrasing it in a different way, so let's see. Yes, you get a deployable model at the end as a result of the accelerator. What are your offerings? Okay, let me phrase it differently. I wanna know your offerings. Okay, so you see this didn't work out well. So let's inspect this. When you inspect this, you can actually, what you can do is you can add a filter response to this. You can even add an alternative. So you can add a response to it. For example, check our website www.justanalytics.com. Okay, so I've added this. Now let me save and train. So when you do this, what happens is your model is evolving. So you test your model, you'll get certain responses wrong, you inspect it, you give it the right response. You can even add alternative phrasing where the same question will be asked in a certain different way, and then you test it. I wanna see, okay, it corrected its response now. Check our website www.justanalytics.com. So this is Q&A maker. You can publish it, you can take it live within a day. You can customize it to make it more advanced as well. So that's what this service is all about. Now, coming back to this, I would also like to highlight what are the top AI skill sets that someone who is embarking on AI should focus on. So the top 5 technical skills are number 1, Python. It's a no-brainer. See, if you know Python, right, the rest of them you can pick up very fast. But if you don't know Python, it's difficult for you to go to the rest of them. Second is the fundamental ML algorithms, the old ones, the regressions, the SVMs of the world. Then the third is deep learning. Fourth is distributed computing. This is important because the data sets are becoming bigger and bigger. That's why it's called big data. So what you should be focusing on is also learning how you can use Spark. And fifth is knowing cloud fundamentals. You should know how you integrate with different Azure components to run AI and ML projects. The top 3 emerging areas of AI, if I have to say, are computer vision, conversational AI, and NLP, which I just shared with you before. Now, very quick overview of some of the use cases we do. We do retail genome where we set up computer vision for retail stores. So if there's missing inventory, there's shoplifting, or detecting the number of facings of a product, depending on what is the need of the customer, we do computer vision for retail stores. We also do receipt processing automation. In fact, in our company, our HR saves 80% of the time she used to spend earlier by using receipt processing automation. The employees submit receipts. HR used to have to manually verify those, but that happens automatically using Azure computer vision. The OCR service. We have insurance claim verification where you upload the image of a car. It tells you what are the damaged parts, what is the severity, what is the repair estimate. So this is something useful in the insurance industry for the insured people to get faster claims, or at least get a faster assessment of their thing. And the second thing is it also introduces objectivity in the whole damage assessment process. Airports monitoring is for airports. How do you monitor what's happening on the airport? How do you monitor whether things that were supposed to happen on time happened on time, etc. And the last, okay, maybe a couple more. Defect detection I've already covered. So how do you figure out defects in machinery or manufactured products? Workplace safety detection. Suppose it's a construction company. How do you ensure everybody is wearing the safety clothing, the safety equipments, etc.? How do you send real-time alerts for this so that immediate action is taken on this? And the last one is our COVID-19 workplace safety monitoring. So in the interest of time, I will not go through the whole platform, which I wanted to go through, but I've put a screenshot here. So here you can see we have this platform where we can see all the mask breaches or the social distancing breaches. We can, if there's a wrong prediction, we can even mark it as wrong, and then next time it will go back again into the model and it will improve the model further. So this is the platform we have built for ourselves. So I think that's all from my side. I think I overshot by 5-6 minutes. Now I think I can take any questions if there are.
Thank you, Vishal. That was a great presentation. I didn't know that data science was very sexy.
It is, it is. I mean, it's getting hotter and hotter. I mean, the beauty of data science, unlike many other areas of IT projects like data lakes or anything else, is that there's so much variety. Um, and there's so much, so see, there's variety in how you do something, and there's variety in what you do. Variety in how you do something is coming in all the fields because of the advancement of cloud. So that's there in data lakes as well. But variety in what you do as well is something that makes AI very special. Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah. There are quite a few actually. Thank you, Vishal. That's very informative. So we've received a few questions from our attendees, which I will then ask you now, Vishal. The first one we have from, let's see here, Matthew Cortez. Matthew asks, what are the best learning programs available so far for upskilling AI and data science?
Okay, so I would recommend two of them. First is, that's a question I think that May can answer even in more detail than me. But if you see FutureLearn's course structure, I think that's a very good starting point because it covers the Azure ML service very well. It covers the basic statistics that is needed. Um, so I think that's a very good starting point. The other you can look at, the other learning source you can look at is the Microsoft's own tutorials, and there's some learning paths on Microsoft as well that you can take a look at. So I think there are two things, right? One is the data science portion of it, and second is how do you do it well on Azure and leverage the Azure's value proposition. So so what CloudSwift's program does is it gives you both. And then if you want to go further into details of other components, you can go to the I think Azure ML learning paths. Yep.
Okay, so another question here from Fadula Grisham. Fadula asks, how important is Azure Machine Learning, Q&A, and Cortana Intelligence on having skill sets as an AI engineer?
You mean how dependent it is on having these skill sets?
Possibly, yes. He asks about Azure Machine Learning, Cortana Intelligence. How important are they as a skill set, knowing them as an AI engineer?
So, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong. The question is that for these services, to use these services, how critical is it to know AI in depth? Is that the question, or is the question how important these are for AI?
How important knowing them are for an AI engineer?
I think it's very, very important, and the reason is very simple. And I tell this again and again to everyone, and this is actually the foundation of our data science accelerator program as well. See, AI and data science, unlike many other domains of IT, has a lot more uncertainty. If you understand statistics, if I have to say, the standard deviation of AI success is very high as compared to IT average standard deviation. And the reason is that you don't know whether there's a pattern in the data. So that what that leads to is it makes it very critical for you to have pace in AI. You have to do things fast. If you have to fail, you have to fail fast, right? If you can do 20 experiments instead of 10 experiments in the same period, that gives you an edge. So that is where all these services come into play, because Azure Auto ML, um, I mean the Q&A maker, all of these, they speed up the entire process. So you can do two things, right? The two advantages are, number one, because you save time, you can try more problems. Or second advantage is, if you fail faster. If you succeed faster, and then you can focus on customizing it further. So I think if I have to summarize it in a nutshell, it's very critical. And the reason is not that without this you can't do certain things. Yes, part of it is that. But the biggest reason is the speed that it brings to your data science. That is the biggest reason.
Oh, all right, all right. I get that. I hope our viewers get that also. So, last question for today. There are a few more on my list of questions that were asked during your talk. Last question. I think everyone can agree with this question or relate to this question. Um, what is the advantage of being certified in Azure AI as compared to other AI technologies out there?
Okay, so see, ultimately, the advantage of Azure AI certification is twofold. First is you upskill yourself. Second is because of the high rate of growth of Azure. I mean, if you read up on the growth rate of the different cloud providers, the way Azure is growing, I think from a career perspective, it also puts you in a better position to position yourself, because the adoption of Azure is increasing more and more. And specifically the AI stack of Azure is, if you see the three cloud providers, the AI stack of Azure leads, and it's a bit more advanced. Yes, all of the other cloud providers also follow it. I mean, they also come up with similar services, but you get it faster on Azure, right? So that's the advantage of having an AI certification. First is to skill yourself. Second is to position yourself better in a world which is um, picking up Azure very fast.
Thank you for answering that, Vishal. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for the questions. As Vishal mentioned earlier during his talk, data analytics is one of the most in demand and sexiest careers today. So, as you may be wondering, how would I be starting our data scientist career? Or I'm interested in learning data science. How do I start? Fortunately, CloudSwyft together with Microsoft, Future Learn um, has developed a very interesting micro credential that we can learn easily, where you can learn the basics of learning Python, Microsoft Azure AI, Microsoft Excel, with the micro credential provided by CloudSwift, Microsoft, and Future Learn. So just for today or just for this webinar, CloudSwift is giving out 10% discount to anyone who want to avail of the micro credentials provided in the Future Learn platform. Just go to bit.ly/AI microcred. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/AI microcred to access the microcredential. So if you have questions or if you have any concerns or if your company would want to learn about Microsoft AI, Microsoft Python Basics, machine learning, send an email to futurelearnsales@cloudswift.com. Thank you, Vishal, again for giving us that wonderful talk. Very insightful, very interesting. Thank you very much. We hope to invite you again to another of our webinars. I hope you'll say yes again. This is very interesting to me, and I hope to our learners, very interesting as well. We would like to
Thank you for
invite
the
you
opportunity.
also. Yes, thank you, Vishal. We would like to also invite you to join our next webinar in the series for Azure AI Technology Skills. This one is for Microsoft Azure AI Technology Skills in Digital Mental Health, hosted by our friends from AI Health or AI Australia Health, Dr. Ben Hadian, Chief Experience Officer of AI Health Australia, and Dr. Naeem Rasgu, Head of Research and Development and Lead Artificial Intelligence Scientist in AI Australia. We would hope to see you there again in our next webinar. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Vishal, for this very insightful webinar. We will be sending the attendees a copy of the video, a copy of Vishal's video for you to look through again, to share. And then also, we'll be sending you a survey so we'd know how you wanted the next webinar, how great Vishal's webinar is, and how you want us to give you next webinars. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vishal. Thank you, our audience. Thank you for listening. See you again in our next webinars.